Employers. When did firing someone trigger instant karma for your whole company? Story 1. I worked at a high-end bakery chain where the head pastry chef, Miguel, had been with the company for 18 years. He wasn't just the guy who baked, he was the bakery. He had created most of the top-selling recipes, including our signature almond croissant that people lined up for. Then the new regional manager came in. Young, cocky, MBA tooting guy named Travis. Within weeks, he called Miguel overpaid and replaceable and started passive-aggressively criticizing his work. Miguel kept quiet but clearly was insulted. One Monday, Miguel was let go. No warning, just, "We're going in a different direction." The next day, our regular customers started asking why the croissants tasted different. Reviews tanked. Within a month, 2 franchise locations closed due to brand inconsistency. The kicker? Miguel had quietly filed for a trademark on several of his original recipes when he first created them. The company had unknowingly been violating that for years. After he was fired, he enforced it legally. He now runs his own boutique bakery under his own name. Guess what his bestseller is? Almond croissant. And that regional manager? Let go 6 months later, due to performance. Story 2. I worked in a warehouse for a small logistics firm. Blue-collar job, mostly guys in their 40s to 50s. One of our shift leads, Marcus, was the kind of guy who made everything run smoothly. He memorized schedules, jumped in when people were out, and basically kept our operation sane. Then, the owner's 23-year-old son, Tyler, got promoted to director of operations because he had a business degree. He thought Marcus was old school and resistant to innovation. Within 3 weeks, Marcus was fired after a heated argument about efficiency. Well, turns out Marcus was the only one who knew how to process certain overseas customs documents correctly. No one realized this until 2 weeks later, when an entire container of electronics got flagged and delayed. That delay triggered breach of contract fines. Within a month, 4 clients pulled out. We went from 35 employees to 12. Tyler resigned, and Marcus, he got hired by a competitor across town and brought 3 clients with him. Story 3. I was part of a marketing startup that loved to brag about its family culture. Our head of HR, Brenda, was this incredible woman in her 50s who everyone trusted. She fought for fair benefits, protected junior staff from shady execs, and somehow remembered everyone's birthday. Then, our CEO decided she was too emotional and replaced her with some HR tech bro who didn't believe in PTO. The week Brenda left, 4 women from different departments filed complaints about a VP making unwanted advances. Brenda had been shielding them, documenting quietly, preparing a case. The new guy swept it all under the rug. It went public. Within 72 hours, 3 sponsors pulled out, and the company's family values slogan was being dragged on LinkedIn. A senior developer leaked internal emails showing the cover-up. In 2 months, the company was sued, rebranded, and cut staff by 60%. Brenda got hired by a competitor as vice president of people. She hired 2 of the women who'd filed the complaints. Story 4. Back in college, I worked part-time for a local movie theater. The projectionist, Alan, was a quiet older man who knew everything about those machines. He trained every new hire, fixed breakdowns, and sometimes stayed overnight if something glitched. A new general manager came in, some ex-Applebee's guy, and thought digital meant we didn't need a projectionist anymore. Alan got let go without even a thank you. The very next weekend was the premiere of a huge superhero movie. Tickets were sold out for every showing, but no one had tested the equipment without Alan. The screen went black 15 minutes in. Every single theater glitched. No one knew how to restart the servers correctly. Hundreds of angry customers, refunds everywhere. Social media exploded. We trended for the wrong reasons. Alan, watching the chaos from home, sipping tea, he got hired by a rival theater the next week, who made sure to advertise their projectionist on staff. Story 5. I used to work for a boutique ad agency. We had a copywriter named Dev. Quiet guy. Always wore headphones. Rarely spoke in meetings. But the man had a gift for storytelling. He saved more campaigns than I can count, often rewriting stuff the night before launch to save client relationships. Then our creative director, jealous, clearly, said Dev wasn't a team player, and that vibe fit was more important. Dev was fired. No one said anything, but morale plummeted. 2 months later, our biggest client, $900,000 per year account, asked to meet our lead copywriter. Of course, Dev was gone. They weren't happy. Turns out, Dev had ghostwritten their entire rebrand. They left us. A few weeks later, we discovered Dev had been hired directly by them. The agency laid off 6 people, including the creative director, and in our group chat, someone anonymously posted one of Dev's old taglines. Silence isn't absence, it's preparation. Story 6. I worked at a nonprofit where money was tight but morale was high. Largely thanks to Samira, our finance coordinator. She wasn't flashy, but she was efficient and deeply ethical. She flagged any suspicious billing, caught grant misallocations, and made sure every cent went where it was supposed to. One day, she challenged the new director's decision to expense a lavish hotel stay to a children's education fund. 2 weeks later, she was let go for performance issues. The rest of us knew it was retaliation. 3 months later, an external audit dropped. Samira had anonymously tipped off the grant agency. They found nearly $200,000 in misappropriated funds. The agency froze our funding immediately. Board stepped in, fired the director, but it was too late. Donations dried up. We lost office space, half the staff, and had to merge with another nonprofit to survive. Samira now oversees compliance at a much bigger organization. She never even mentioned the drama publicly. She didn't need to. Story 7. We had a janitor named Jorge at our corporate building. Not just a janitor. He was the guy who'd help when the printer jammed, gave you jumper cables in the lot, and even shoveled sidewalks during storms. The kind of person you never noticed until they were gone. One day, the new facilities manager decided to replace Jorge with a cheaper third-party service. No notice, no goodbye, just, today's your last day. That very week, a pipe burst in the archives room. Thousands of physical records, many irreplaceable, were water damaged. Turns out Jorge had been checking the pressure valves daily as part of his routine, something the new service didn't do because it wasn't on their contract. Total damages? Over $2 million. They tried calling Jorge to consult. He declined. He now works at a law firm down the street. They don't just pay him more, they gave him a reserved parking spot. Story 8. At my last job, the company laid off a beloved product designer, Nina, during a round of strategic restructuring. The thing is, Nina was pregnant, due in 4 months, and had just returned from a checkup. Everyone knew it was sketchy timing. People were furious. HR swore it wasn't discrimination. Legal said they'd be fine. The CEO even made a post about tough decisions. Within weeks, Nina's story went viral on LinkedIn. Screenshots of internal emails leaked. A few former employees even shared pay discrepancies and their own HR horror stories. A Women in Tech collective picked up the story. And overnight, we were a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. 3 big partnerships paused deals. 1 venture capital firm withdrew funding. The CEO stepped down. Half the board quit. And Nina, she filed a lawsuit and settled. Quietly, handsomely. Story 9. My friend Layla worked for a local architecture firm as their office manager. She handled everything. Client scheduling, city permits, payroll quirks. She'd even run errands for the partners' kids. But she wasn't loud or flashy, so the firm took her for granted. One partner decided they needed to modernize and cut costs. Layla was let go, replaced with a digital assistant platform. Except, no one realized Layla kept all the login credentials for the permit portal, billing software, and even the building's keycard system. She'd made everything run so smoothly that no one else had learned how. After she left, they couldn't access their project files for 2 weeks. They missed a bid deadline worth $1.4 million and lost the contract. They begged her to consult for them. She agreed for 3 times her original rate and made them sign a 12-month retainer up front. She's now running her own admin firm for creative studios, and she's booked solid. Story 10. I interned for a tech company where a senior developer named Kieran basically held the backend together with duct tape and magic. The code base was a mess, years of spaghetti logic, and Kieran was the only one who truly understood it. When a younger CTO came in, he dismissed Kieran as outdated and pushed him out during a refresh. Kieran didn't fight it. He just handed over a drive and walked out. A month later, a system update caused the internal portal to crash. No one could fix it. All the documentation Kieran left behind, half of it referenced legacy architecture no one else had access to. They tried restoring from backups, but Kieran had warned them the backups were buggy. No one listened. After 4 days of downtime, clients started leaving. The whole dev team was put under review. Several got laid off. Meanwhile, Kieran had launched a freelance business fixing legacy systems. Their CEO had to hire him back, temporarily, as a consultant. His rate? Let's just say it included a respect fee. Story 11. I worked at a high-pressure legal transcription agency. Deadlines were tight, clients were ruthless, and one employee, Claire, was like our safety net. She edited hundreds of pages per week with almost no errors. She had a near photographic memory and could recite obscure state laws from memory. But she didn't socialize. She didn't stay late to drink wine with management or play trivia. So when the CEO brought in his friend's niece as a culture manager, Claire was suddenly labeled not a team fit. She was fired over Zoom. A week later, a massive transcription error made its way into a legal submission for a $5 million case. The opposing counsel caught it and used it to discredit our client. Guess who used to handle that account? Claire. Within a month, we lost 2 major law firms as clients. The niece resigned to pursue other interests. Claire? She's now head of quality at a competitor who absorbed most of our old clients. Story 12. We had a guy named Rob who ran our rural delivery routes. Most drivers didn't want those shifts, dirt roads, odd hours, unreliable cell service, but Rob did them without complaint. He even helped troubleshoot route planning software by marking hazards and fuel stops. Then the company decided to outsource deliveries to a third-party gig app to cut costs. Rob and 6 other drivers were let go. First week into the switch, one of the new drivers took the wrong route, flipped a van into a creek, and damaged $30,000 worth of equipment. Another ignored a road closure and got cited. 2 customers filed legal complaints after time-sensitive meds arrived spoiled. Rob had quietly started his own courier service the day after getting fired. And guess who most of our customers switched to within 3 months? The company tried rehiring Rob. He declined and offered them his rates instead. Story 13. In a creative agency I worked for, the best pitch deck designer we had, Malik, was always overlooked. He didn't wear trendy clothes or network over cocktails, but he had a sixth sense for visuals that converted. One day, a new CCO came in and decided to trim the fat, citing that we needed more edge. Malik was fired and replaced with a flashy TikTok designer. First pitch without Malik. We lost the client. Second pitch? A meme made it into a serious investment deck. Cringe. 3 clients gone in 2 months. The CCO blamed everyone else. Meanwhile, Malik had opened a boutique design service. He started getting called by name in client requests. Eventually, one of our biggest clients left us entirely, only to hire Malik directly. The irony? We had to outsource pitch work to Malik's studio. Now we pay more for less loyalty. Story 14. I worked at a call center where Janet was our training supervisor. She wasn't loud or flashy, but she had onboarded over 120 reps in 3 years, and her trainees always had the best KPIs, but upper management thought she wasn't tech-forward. And during a restructuring, she was replaced by a training automation platform. No human trainer, just videos. Within weeks, newbies didn't understand escalation protocols. Call resolution times tripled. Angry customers flooded social media. We were forced to rehire live trainers. But Janet had moved on. She started a side business offering personalized onboarding for high-turnover industries. By the end of the year, she signed a contract with us. She now charges 5 times her old salary to train our reps. And they finally listened to her. Story 15. At a small coffee chain, Maya was the store manager at our flagship location. She kept everything humming. Staff morale, inventory, schedules. She even personally knew half the customers by name. A regional director, trying to rebrand the store experience, fired her because she was too comfortable and resistant to change. They brought in a younger manager with 0 food service experience but great Instagram aesthetics. Within a week, the espresso machine overflowed twice. The wrong milk orders caused a dozen refunds, and a long-time customer slipped on a spilled drink and filed a claim. The store's Google rating dropped from 4.7 to 3.2 in a month. Staff started quitting mid-shift. One barista walked out and posted, "Bring Maya back." Maya? She opened a competitor cafe across the street. First week, a line around the block. And yeah, she remembers every regular's order. Story 16. I worked for a mid-sized software company that was rolling out a healthcare scheduling tool. One guy, Victor, was responsible for maintaining the data integrity of hospital shift algorithms. No one fully understood how his formula worked. It just did. He was low profile, didn't engage in office politics, and quietly worked miracles. Then, a new VP came in with a cost-cutting mandate. Victor didn't sell himself well in a quarterly review and was let go without much pushback. HR even laughed, saying, "He barely talks. He won't fight this." 2 weeks later, hospitals started reporting double-booked shifts, nurses scheduled on back-to-back overnight stints. Surgical teams assigned during their PTO, legal liabilities everywhere. Victor's script had been overwritten, without understanding how it accounted for federal labor laws and overtime. Chaos. The company scrambled to contact Victor. He had already taken a job consulting for one of our biggest hospital clients, who promptly dropped us. The irony? We paid Victor triple to reverse engineer what we had fired him for. Story 17. At the firm I used to work for, Sandra was the in-house events coordinator. She was incredible, knew how to finesse client events, remembered tiny details, like someone's drink preference or kid's name, and once even booked a celebrity cameo for a retirement party under budget. Then a new CFO decided her position was non-essential. She was let go. A third-party agency was brought in to replace her. Our next event, a VIP launch for a client's rebrand. The agency forgot to secure valet parking. One of the partners' clients had to walk 3 blocks in heels and slipped on an icy curb. Also, they served shrimp, despite the CEO's known shellfish allergy. He had a reaction. Paramedics came. Client pulled their $2 million contract. The company tried calling Sandra, but she'd already taken a role at a bigger firm. Their events? Now legendary. Story 18. In my first job out of college, I worked at a tech startup where one guy, Leo, handled cybersecurity. Quiet, methodical, obsessed with updates and patching bugs. He once stayed 36 hours straight during a threat alert. When a new CTO came in, he brought his own security guy and fired Leo, saying, "We need speed, not paranoia." That weekend, our servers were breached. Hacker group dropped 40,000 client emails and internal memos online. PR disaster. Clients pulled out en masse. Turns out Leo had warned about that exact vulnerability 3 times in the past month. The startup almost shut down. The CTO was fired. And Leo? He was hired by a competitor who used the breach as a marketing point. They doubled their client base within 6 months. Story 19. I worked at a small animation studio. Sasha was our lead storyboard artist. Calm, patient, visionary. She'd worked on every single one of our projects since year 1. The studio owner decided to replace her with a hot new influencer artist to appeal to younger audiences. They gave Sasha 2 weeks' notice. She quietly packed her stuff and didn't say a word. First project without her, delayed 6 times. The new artist was creative, but didn't understand sequencing or pacing. The story was all over the place. Clients asked where Sasha was. The owner lied and said she moved on. Turns out, Sasha had been recruited by a major streaming platform to oversee a new animated series. That series, released the same week as our troubled project, and completely overshadowed it. The final insult? One of our former clients called Sasha to animate their next feature. Story 20. I used to work at a luxury boutique hotel. Carlos was our maintenance manager. He knew every pipe, fuse box, HVAC setting by heart. Guests loved him. He'd fix AC units in minutes, climb onto the roof mid-storm, even pull double shifts when short-staffed. But a regional director claimed Carlos was overpaid and could be replaced by a facilities app and a rotating handyman crew. Carlos was let go just before summer peak season. Week 1. The pool heater malfunctioned and guests left angry reviews. Week 2. A pipe burst above a penthouse suite. Week 3. Fire alarm went off at 3 a.m. for no reason, and no one could figure out how to reset it. We dropped to 2.9 stars on TripAdvisor. Management tried to rehire Carlos, but he was already under contract with a competitor hotel down the street, who put up a billboard featuring him with the tagline, "Carlos fixes everything." They're fully booked now. We're not. Story 21. I used to work for a chain of music stores that sold instruments and gave lessons. We had a guy named Julian who ran the lessons program at our flagship store. He was a jazz pianist, brilliant teacher, and somehow managed to schedule 20-plus instructors across rotating shifts while mentoring kids with behavioral issues. When corporate decided to go all-digital scheduling and cut legacy roles, Julian was laid off. He didn't make a scene. He just nodded and left. 2 weeks later, scheduling collapsed. Instructors showed up for lessons that weren't booked. Students came in and found no teachers. Refunds were issued. Chaos. Turns out Julian hadn't just scheduled. He had maintained personal relationships with every instructor. Some refused to work under the new system. Others left with him. Julian opened a private studio 3 blocks away. He took 80% of our lesson customers with him. Our location? Shut down 6 months later, due to declining performance. Story 22. I worked at a small content agency where one writer, Brielle, handled most of the long-form work. White papers, in-depth reports, case studies. Clients loved her. She had a way of making complex things sound simple, but she was introverted, didn't engage in Slack convos, didn't go out for beers. So when budget cuts hit, the head of creative kept his fun team and let Brielle go. Immediately, 3 clients noticed the drop in quality. One even asked, "Did you get a new intern to write this?" The agency scrambled, bringing in freelancers to match her tone. No one could. Brielle quietly launched her own writing service. Within months, she was ghostwriting for the same clients, who had terminated their contracts with us. The agency shut down the long-form division. The head of creative, still ranting about loyalty. Story 23. I worked at a law firm where Cheryl managed the records room. She wasn't a lawyer, no fancy title, but she knew where everything was. Motions from 1997, deposition transcripts stored off-site, even sealed evidence boxes. She was basically a human filing system. The firm decided to digitize everything and eliminate redundancies. Cheryl was one of those redundancies. They scanned files, but mislabeled thousands. No one thought to ask Cheryl about the old shorthand codes. Then came discovery for a major case. A crucial document was missing, and Cheryl was the only one who knew how it had been cataloged. They called her, practically begging. She declined. The firm had to delay the case, and word got around to other clients. Revenue dropped. Cheryl? She was hired by a competitor that specializes in legal record management, at twice her old pay. Story 24. At a trendy restaurant I once bartended at, we had a dishwasher named Mo. Quiet, punctual, never complained. But everyone knew Mo was the glue. He fixed the ice machine when it broke, knew where backup supplies were stashed, and cleaned like his life depended on it. One day, the GM fired him for lack of energy and replaced him with two part-timers who were more vibrant. The first Friday night after that, dishes backed up, glasses ran out, the bar slowed down, and a food critic sat for 40 minutes waiting for a drink. He wrote a brutal review that included the line, "I suspect the restaurant lost someone important." They begged Mo to come back. He had already taken a job down the street and was getting tipped out there too. Story 25. I worked at a media startup where our social media manager, Danny, had grown the company's following from 2,000 to 500,000 in under a year. She understood the platforms better than anyone, timed every post perfectly, and regularly had tweets go viral. But she wasn't interested in being on camera, which annoyed the founders who wanted influencer-type staff. So they hired a bubbly intern and phased Danny out. 2 months later, engagement tanked. The intern posted tone-deaf memes and misspelled hashtags. A botched brand partnership post went viral. For all the wrong reasons. Out of touch trended. Meanwhile, Danny had started freelancing, and one of her first clients was a former brand partner who dropped us. The founders tried spinning it. We're evolving. But advertisers pulled deals. Danny, she never made a fuss. She just kept growing and took half our audience with her. Story 26. I used to work at a private elementary school. Carla was the front desk receptionist, but she did far more than answer phones. She comforted anxious kids, kept divorced parents from clashing during pickups, and somehow remembered every kid's allergy. Then, a new principal came in from the public school system and decided we needed a more polished image. Carla was let go and replaced with someone who had a background in corporate hospitality. The very next week, a child with a nut allergy had a mild reaction because the new receptionist didn't double-check the birthday treat policy. The week after that, 2 parents got into a shouting match in the hallway. Carla used to intercept those situations before they exploded. Complaints skyrocketed. Enrollment dropped for the next semester. Several teachers quietly resigned. Carla, hired by a nearby Montessori program. Half the families transferred their kids with her. Story 27. My buddy Evan worked as a safety supervisor on a construction site. He was obsessive about protocol. Wore his vest like armor, double-checked harnesses, even lectured guys twice his size if he caught them cutting corners. Everyone called him Safety Dad. But a new project manager thought he was slowing things down. We're here to build, not babysit. Evan was fired. 2 weeks later, a subcontractor fell from scaffolding. He survived, but fractured his spine in 2 places. Turned out the harness hadn't been secured properly. Evan would have caught it in his morning walkthrough. An OSHA investigation followed. Work was halted. The project fell behind schedule, the company was fined, and the client canceled their next deal with us. Evan now works for a competitor. They built a whole safety culture campaign around him. We lost bids to them twice last quarter. Story 28. I worked in publishing. Gwen was our copy chief. Quiet, precise, and annoyingly good at her job. She spotted inconsistencies no one else caught, ensured legal clearance, and never let a single typo make it to print. People said she had grammar in her blood. But when we rebranded to Move Faster, Gwen was seen as a bottleneck. She was pushed out during a restructuring. The first issue post Gwen had a typo. On the cover. Second issue, misattributed quote. Legal flagged it. Third, a full-page article had to be pulled mid-print because no one realized the subject was under embargo. Subscribers noticed. Advertisers noticed. Sales dropped. Gwen? She was freelancing. and working for two of our competitors. We tried hiring her back. She politely declined with, "You already proofread that decision." Story 29. I worked at a regional car dealership chain. We had a lot porter named Marcus. He wasn't flashy, but he knew every regular customer, which cars needed jump starts, which ones shouldn't be parked near trees. He even brought his own tools in on weekends. A new regional manager said Marcus was non-essential and hired a landscaping company to handle lot appearances. Marcus was let go without even a cake. First month, 3 customer cars got scratched because the landscaping crew used blowers near parked vehicles. One battery died because no one noticed the dome light on overnight. A client who spent 6 figures a year on fleet cars went elsewhere after his truck wasn't ready on delivery day. Marcus now works at that client's own private fleet operation. Our dealership missed quarterly targets for the first time in 11 years. Story 30. My old firm had a paralegal named Dana. She was the only one who could decipher our most difficult client's chaotic file system. The guy ran a dozen LLCs and changed his email address every other month, but Dana kept it straight. When the firm hired a new senior partner, she wanted to streamline operations and brought in her own team. Dana was laid off during that transition. 3 weeks later, a major deadline was missed because no one realized one of the LLCs was being sued. Dana used to track those notices manually. It cost the client millions in default judgment. He fired the firm and sued us for negligence. Dana? She had joined a rival firm, one that now represents that client. Story 31. I used to work for a small-town newspaper. Our printing press operator, Hank, was old school. He'd worked there for 28 years, knew how to fix jams, recalibrate ink levels, and manually correct alignment when the automated system failed. But the new editor wanted to modernize and outsource printing to a company 2 counties over. Hank was let go with a cake and a cold handshake. The first outsourced issue arrived 2 days late due to a snowstorm. Second issue, half the pages printed upside down. Third issue, ads were missing entirely. Local businesses pulled their contracts. Subscribers canceled en masse. People missed Hank. Meanwhile, Hank partnered with a local school district to start a vocational program on old press equipment. That story covered by every news outlet except ours. A few months later, the editor who fired him was let go for loss of community trust. Story 32. At my last job in a high-end furniture showroom, Angela was our lead logistics coordinator. She could juggle warehouse delays, client reschedules, and fragile deliveries like a magician, but she was rough around the edges and didn't match the new manager's aesthetic of polished Instagram vibes. So they replaced her with a guy in loafers who had zero experience with freight systems. Within a month, an $18,000 dining set was delivered to the wrong state. A custom sofa for a celebrity arrived damaged. 2 clients posted scathing reviews about unprofessional chaos. Angela had started a private delivery coordination company. Clients could pay a premium for guaranteed logistics. Guess who her first client was? Our most high-profile buyer. She now handles 80% of our VIP deliveries, and we pay her 5 times what we once paid in salary. Story 33. I worked in IT at a biotech startup. Raj was our in-house software architect. He built our internal dashboards, inventory trackers, and lab data sync system from the ground up. He wasn't flashy, but he always delivered. Quietly. Until a flashy new CTO came in and labeled Raj's work legacy bloat. They let Raj go to start fresh, except the new CTO didn't understand that Raj hadn't just coded the system. He had built a dozen undocumented dependencies that no one else knew about. A week into the new system, researchers couldn't access real-time samples. Lab results were overwritten. Months of testing corrupted. Investors demanded answers. Raj, already consulting for a medtech firm, he refused to return, even for double the pay. The startup never recovered its funding cycle. And the CTO? Gone. Fast. Story 34. Back when I worked at a small design firm, Rachel was our pitch whisperer. She wasn't a designer, but she sat in on every proposal meeting, scribbled notes, and rewrote every pitch deck to sound like gold. But when a new creative director came in, he thought Rachel was just admin and didn't understand design. She was laid off in a round of budget cuts. We submitted 3 major proposals without her. 2 got rejected outright. One client said, "This doesn't sound like you guys anymore." That was $300,000 gone. Rachel got poached by a multinational agency as a lead proposal strategist. The next time we went up against them in a bid, they won it, and someone recognized her name on the pitch doc. Story 35. I used to work at a dog rescue nonprofit. Jamie ran our social media. She wasn't just posting cute dogs. She scheduled fundraisers, coordinated adoption drives, and handled crisis PR when a transport van broke down or a dog went missing. One board member didn't like her tone online, said she wasn't professional enough. Jamie was asked to step down. Within weeks, donor engagement tanked. 2 rescue videos got flagged for copyright issues because no one else understood fair use. Then someone posted a tone-deaf meme that triggered a backlash. Jamie launched her own pet welfare page. In 3 months, she gained more followers than our official page had in 5 years. She started her own nonprofit. Our old donors started tagging her in their posts instead of us. Story 36. I worked at a niche tech repair company that specialized in refurbishing old-school electronics. Things like vintage audio equipment and 90s gaming consoles. Our technician Eli was a wizard. He could revive a fried Sega Genesis like it was 1994. A new operations manager took over and saw Eli's salary as an unnecessary expense. He was let go and replaced by 2 cheaper interns with YouTube certifications. First week, a rare $8,000 turntable got misdiagnosed and resold as parts only. The buyer flipped it for $25,000 on eBay. Another customer got back a console with a missing soundboard and blasted the company on Reddit, where retro collectors live. In less than a month, we went from being praised in niche communities to being blacklisted. Meanwhile, Eli opened a one-man shop. His waitlist? 3 months out. Our company closed its retro division. Interns gone. Manager transitioned. Eli just kept soldering and smiling. Story 37. I worked for a fashion startup that made eco-conscious activewear. Haley was our customer support lead. She knew every long-term buyer by name, responded to refund requests with charm, and had the kind of empathy you can't teach. Then a brand consultant decided we needed to automate more. Haley was replaced with a chatbot plus 2 remote agents overseas. Within weeks, return rates doubled. Influencers started posting about ignored emails and faulty sizing responses. One particularly loyal buyer, an athlete with 250,000 followers, posted her cancellation email publicly, saying, "I miss when Haley used to reply." Haley? She'd been hired by another DTC brand to run their customer experience. They made her the face of their community. Guess which brand's former customers followed? Story 38. Back in my food industry days, I worked at a wholesale bakery. Luis was our flour guy, literally. He managed inventory, tracked ingredient ratios, adjusted dough hydration based on humidity, and always knew when a supplier was slacking. A new exec decided to automate inventory and modernize the floor. Luis was let go during a cost-cutting restructure. Within days, the dough started overproofing. Batches collapsed mid-bake. Deliveries were off schedule. One client returned an entire shipment saying, "This isn't what we ordered." The automation system failed to flag a flour shipment that was off-spec. Luis would have caught it on texture alone. A month later, the exec was gone. But so were 3 of our best clients. Luis, consulting for our biggest competitor. Our old head chef applied to join him. Story 39. At an architectural firm I worked for, Tina was our permit liaison. That may sound dull, but she knew the ins and outs of every city inspector's process, had contacts in every zoning department, and could get emergency variances pushed through in a day. When a partner's nephew got hired and needed a growth role, Tina was pushed out. "We'll train him," they said. They did not. Our next 4 residential projects hit permitting delays. One was built an inch over code and had to be partially demolished. A $1 million home sat unfinished for 6 months while the city reviewed documents Tina used to fast-track in 48 hours. Clients pulled out. Referrals dried up. Tina now runs a small consultancy for navigating municipal permitting. Her biggest client? One of our ex-clients who never came back. Story 40. I worked at a small indie game studio. Our community manager, Leo, wasn't flashy, but he built a loyal Discord following, moderated everything himself, and even remembered players' birthdays. He turned our buggy alpha release into a beloved cult game. Then a new investor wanted influencer appeal, and Leo was replaced with a loud ex-streamer with reach. Within weeks, the Discord turned toxic. Longtime players got banned for disagreeing with mods. One mod started leaking dev info. The community collapsed. Steam reviews plummeted. Leo started his own dev blog. Players followed him. Some offered to fund his game idea. Within a year, he launched his own pixel RPG with crowdfunded backing and crushed our sales on launch day. We made memes. He made money. Story 41. I worked at a boutique law firm that handled complex real estate cases. Eric was the courier, but calling him that undersold everything he did. He knew traffic patterns better than Google Maps, always got docs signed before deadlines, and reminded us of forgotten filings. Then the managing partner said we needed to modernize delivery with a same-day courier app. Eric was let go. The app missed its first delivery. A zoning appeal wasn't filed on time. Then a title transfer was delayed due to driver confusion. A $1 million deal fell through because the seller didn't get the documents until after the deadline. Clients were furious. One said, "I liked it better when Eric brought me cookies with my contracts." Eric now works for a title company who advertises his name in their marketing. We lost 4 major clients to them. Story 42. At a luxury skincare brand, our in-house chemist Lonnie was the heart of innovation. She wasn't flashy, didn't post on LinkedIn, but she'd developed half our top-selling products. She was also the only one who knew which suppliers occasionally diluted raw ingredients. A new CMO thought Lonnie's approach lacked storytelling. She was replaced with a brand chemist who had a TikTok following. The first new product gave 2 influencers mild burns. Turns out the lab had used the wrong grade of lactic acid. Lonnie would have caught it in 10 seconds. The backlash went viral. Lawsuits were filed. The CMO was fired. Lonnie? She launched her own clean skincare line. Quietly, no frills. She's in Sephora now. We're not. Story 43. I worked in hotel security. Mitch was our overnight guy. Ex-military, calm under pressure, and the kind of person who didn't just check cameras. He watched them. He once spotted a man tailgating through a service entrance and prevented a robbery. Then corporate decided to rotate shifts for fairness. Mitch was reassigned and eventually laid off. A week later, a bachelorette party reported stolen belongings. Police found that a known thief had walked in through the employee stairwell, something Mitch used to guard during his boring night rounds. Word got out. TripAdvisor reviews dropped. One guest said, "Don't book here unless Mitch is working." Mitch now does private security for a rival resort, and they use his name in brochures. Story 44. At an edtech company, Zoe ran content review. Every textbook, quiz, infographic, we passed it through her. She wasn't flashy, but she caught errors others missed and made sure everything met academic standards. Then the company brought in AI tools to speed things up. Zoe was laid off with a thank you email and an alumni group invite. 2 weeks later, a civics worksheet went viral on Twitter for listing France as a U.S. state. Another included the phrase, "Abraham Lincoln was besties with George Washington." Parents complained. Schools dropped our platform. It became a meme. Zoe was hired by a government-funded learning app. Quietly, professionally, she now reviews our material under contract at twice the rate. Story 45. I worked in a high-end catering company. Omar was the head prep cook. Not the face of the brand, but the reason our food was always consistent. He trained every new hire, memorized client allergies, and had a spreadsheet for event setups that he never even shared. A celebrity chef was brought in to revamp the energy. Omar was let go in a rebranding. Our first event without him? A wedding with a nut allergy guest? Cross-contamination wasn't caught. EMTs were called. The couple sued. Then we mixed up vegan and non-vegan entrees at a major gala. The client was livid. Omar? He got hired by another catering group and took 3 of our best chefs with him. Their first event? The wedding of one of our biggest former clients. Story 46. I worked at a historical preservation nonprofit. Daniel was our archivist. He looked like he lived in a library, and basically did. He knew every document in our vault, from hand-signed letters by Civil War generals to crumbling railroad blueprints. He had no social media, didn't attend galas, and never smiled for photos. The new executive director wanted media-friendly experts. Daniel was let go in favor of someone with a personality. A month later, a donor-sponsored exhibit launched. A key artifact was labeled with the wrong origin. Then a rare photograph was accidentally mounted under direct light and damaged. Worse, a private collector came forward and said the nonprofit had violated his lending agreement. Daniel had warned about all of it. In emails, they ignored. He was rehired under pressure, but only after a scathing op-ed called us custodians of incompetence. Story 47. At a small craft brewery, Ava was our yeast manager. Sounds niche, but she controlled the strain balance and fermentation for every beer we produced. She could taste a batch and tell you if the pH was off. Total brewing whisperer. A flashy investor said we needed more scalable systems and insisted we could automate Ava's role with a digital monitor and standard strain catalog. 2 weeks in, fermentation failed. Beer came out flat, then sour, then explosive, literally. One batch overpressurized and shattered a tank. Customers complained, bars pulled taps. A local blog posted side-by-side reviews of pre-Ava versus robot brew. Not flattering. Ava now runs her own nano brewery. Our old flagship IPA? She cloned it and perfected it. We now buy her kegs for our events. Story 48. I worked for a wedding photography company. Jasper was our photo editor. He didn't shoot the weddings, but he turned raw, unfiltered chaos into cinematic magic. Color correction, retouching, lighting balance. He was the invisible glue. But the owner wanted to cut post-production costs. Jasper was replaced with an offshore service charging $2 per edit. The first couple to receive their gallery were horrified. A groomsman's eyes were closed in half the photos. A bride's hair had been photoshopped to look like a melted candle. Ants blurred into shrubbery. The couple posted it online with the caption, "This is what budget editing gets you." It went viral. Bookings dropped 60%. Jasper now freelances for high-end destination photographers and charges premium. Story 49. In a regional grocery chain, May worked in the floral department. She created custom arrangements that locals adored. People would call in crying after a funeral or celebration, and she knew exactly what to make. Corporate decided flowers were low margin and outsourced the department to prepackaged vendors. May was let go. The Valentine's Day after she left, a delivery went to the wrong address. Another showed up with wilted roses. A bride got white lilies instead of pink peonies, her allergy flower. Social media backlash was immediate. May had started a floral business out of her garage. That spring, she booked out every weekend, including 2 large events that were originally contracted with the chain. Story 50. I worked in a corporate wellness company that offered employee fitness and nutrition programs to big-name clients. Darius was our back-end developer. Never spoke up in meetings, always wore hoodies, and coded like a man possessed. He built our food tracking algorithm from scratch. Then the CTO said Darius was bad for morale and wanted a more collaborative environment. He was fired in a team restructure. 3 weeks later, clients started calling in saying their nutrition logs were showing bizarre data, like someone logging 4,000 calories of toothpaste. Turns out, Darius had hard-coded unique logic that wasn't documented anywhere. The new dev team overwrote it during a cleanup. Everything broke. Our biggest client pulled out. PR crisis. The CTO tried rehiring Darius. He ghosted the email. Story 51. I worked in an indie publishing house that specialized in niche science fiction and fantasy. Our typesetter, Roshan, was a quiet genius. He manually adjusted kerning, line breaks, and text flow so every page looked like art. No software matched his eye. But our new COO decided we should cut manual redundancies. Roshan was let go in favor of an automated formatting tool. The next release had widowed lines everywhere. Page breaks cut in the middle of scenes. Worse, one book had an entire chapter duplicated and another missing completely. Readers noticed. Booktubers dragged us. Authors pulled their upcoming titles. Roshan started his own freelance typesetting studio. The first author to sign with him? One of our best sellers. He posted a single message. Don't worry, I kept the good chapter. Story 52. I used to work at a wildlife conservation park. Cal, our animal behaviorist, had a bond with the animals that was almost eerie. He could get a cranky lynx to cooperate with a head tilt and a whistle. New management said his methods were too old school and wanted standardized, data-driven routines. Cal didn't argue. He left with a sad smile. A month later, 2 wolves fought during a feeding session, something Cal's staggered routine had always prevented. One needed surgery. A rescued eagle refused to perch during shows. Guests complained. Morale among staff dropped. Animal welfare organizations began checking in. Cal was picked up by a private sanctuary. The wolves? They were quietly transferred there a year later. Story 53. In a mid-sized SaaS company, we had an account manager named Priya. She handled our most difficult B2B clients. Big personalities, big demands. But she kept them loyal and paying. When we brought in a new VP of sales, he said she was too passive and not aggressive enough in growth strategy. She was let go during restructuring. One of her clients immediately complained. Where's Priya? She knew our entire workflow. Another client didn't get invoiced correctly and canceled auto-renewal. Within 6 weeks, we lost 3 of her accounts, worth $1.2 million in recurring revenue. Priya? She now runs a client success agency. And guess who hired her to fix their churn problem? The same VP who fired her. Story 54. I worked in a small museum dedicated to maritime history. Dennis was the exhibit engineer. He built interactive displays from scratch, moving ship models, underwater simulations, even a custom periscope. Kids loved them. A grant proposal failed, and the board slashed positions. Dennis was cut. They figured they could buy prefab displays. The new exhibits arrived late and looked like low-budget carnival games. One broke during a school visit, splashing water on someone's laptop. Reviews called the museum lifeless. Attendance dropped 40%. Dennis, hired by a major aquarium to lead experiential design. His new periscope lets kids see historical shipwrecks in 360 degrees. Our museum, closed Mondays now, can't afford staff.